We can start. I'm pretty sure people will be joining as we go along. So good afternoon and welcome to the event Living with Freedom and Joy Through Yoga, which is organized by FAO Staff Corps Indian Cultural Group. So for those who are attending for the first time the Indian Cultural Group activities, we are a small group with around 300 members in the mailing list. From the staff from FAO, WFP and IFAD. And our activities are powered by a small core group as well, which comprises Arshia, Britta sitting over there, Radha there, and Sangeeta, Sonat and Supradik. So today, we are keen to hear more about the living with the freedom and joy through yoga from our guest speaker, Nemir Adjina. So he is a founder and CEO of Zenzium, which tries to incorporate the traditional practices with contemporary human resources management. And he has over 2 decades of experience in personal growth and human development. To be frank, he has got a very unique specialization in combining architect expertise with the Asian healing practices. And he is also the author of the book Shine, Living with Joy and Freedom Through Yoga. So we are really fortunate to have him here to share his experiences and something about his book and also about his experiences with the yoga. So let's maybe plan for something like 30-40 minutes. And then we'll have some questions, and then we can wind up, maybe around 1. So over to you, Namir, and we look forward to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Do I have a microphone or?
No.
Yeah. Okay, there we are. So before I start, I would just like to make a quick use a definition of yoga, which is yoga is relationship and the relation is peace. And that is from TKV Desikachar, who is the author of The Heart of Yoga, which is a seminal modern text on yoga. And Desikachar is the son of the father or the founder of modern yoga practices, which is Sri Krishnamacharya, who lived for 101 years and was the teacher of Iyengar and Pattabhi Jois, who between them have brought most of what is commonly practiced in yoga in the West. So just in order to situate myself within this tradition, in that the practice that I learned comes through this way of teaching. Krishnamacharya taught to his son Desikachar, who then also who authored the book The Heart of Yoga, and was also a teacher of Mark Whitwell, and eventually teacher to my teacher here, Antonio Olivieri in Rome. So this is the practice of yoga that has come through, which I used, which eventually results in the book, just to have things clear. The origin of the yoga, which I'm going to talk about, would be the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which is, again, would most people, I think, would agree, is the textbook of the classical text. It's about 2,000 years old. Patanjali was author of this book, which is really a text on psychology. And as we will see, that who is not familiar, that classical yoga is about the mind and our perception of ourselves and our perceptions of reality. So here we are, Shine, the living with joy and freedom through yoga. And the purpose of this would be is not really to promote the book, or in a sense is to communicate that same message that is in the book itself. a little bit of word about myself. I'm an architect by training, and I first got into yoga in the early 90s to resolve what for me were personal issues. Working in Dubai as an architect, and there were a lot of sort of internal conflicts, and I went to see a yoga teacher trying to figure out what was going on. I was also meditating at the time, and in complete contrast to my daily experience at work and socially and financially, the meditation seemed to be going really well, in the sense that I'd have experiences of light and bliss and all these things, but in the morning I go to work quite depressed, unable to function as a creative person, and we're basically sort of getting worse as time went by. And I went to my yoga teacher. This was in Dubai at that time. There was only one school of yoga, and it was an Indian yoga teacher, and all the students were Indian males. So that shows how much in Dubai has changed, and yoga also. And he said to me, well, that's it. That's what everybody's looking for, the light. Well, I said, well, you know, I'm a mess. How come? What's going on? So we did physical yoga, but that was where I first started with yoga. You know, we do Surya Namaskars and all these practices. I left my job and got involved in healing, as people who change professions always, you know, often do. I was forced to change professions in the sense that at 33 I looked in the mirror and I didn't recognize the face that I saw. So I realized things were getting rather serious and I had to change life, or something would change it for me. Now looking back at it, I thought that was quite an interesting experience, but until I got understanding of yoga, it seemed to me as to be a psychotic episode that I didn't want to repeat. Now, not recognizing the face or the personality or the mask as who you are seems to me probably the best thing that could happen to anybody. But it's taken me 20 years to get there. As I became a healer and treating people, I wanted to give them exercises, because I work physically. I work not far from here, helping people with their physical problems. I thought, well, I should find out a little bit more about exercises to give to people to solve their physical problems. So I enrolled in a 5-year teacher training by Antonio Olivieri, as I mentioned earlier. And that's where we got into contact with this method of yoga. In other words, yoga in the tradition of Sri Krishnamacharya and Desikachar, which is a personalized yoga based around a personal daily practice, which is centered around the breath. So, and there I got my own practice, which started working within me, and I started studying the Yoga Sutras. I thought, wow, what is this? No, so that was about 8 years ago, and after about 5 years, this kind of experience happened, and is still happening, which results in the book. I didn't set out to write a book. It was a kind of flowering, a creative period where the book sort of came through me, and I feel it is kind of my duty to spread this view. In other words, I receive it as a gift, and it's not for me. It's, you know, the least I could do is try and spread it around. In the meantime, there has been since then a creative, flowering of things, and I'm now founded a company which aims to bring this understanding of yoga to the work environment. In other words, to companies and to agencies, because in my work as a healer, I see that there is often a negative influence of work on well-being, and a magnification of problems that we bring to work get magnified at work. And my idea is that if we change work to become a place where we actually get better, then we'll all rather enjoy our work and work harder and more, sort of, thank God it's Monday, no? So there we are. One of the things that is, let's say, axiomatic about my view of yoga is that although it is found its best presentation, its most logical explanation in the culture of India, and probably the most ancient presentation of this state does come from the Indian culture, It is to me a universal truth. The discoveries of yoga are universally true and have been, to some extent, known or approached by people in all cultures. So it's a human, it's not a cultural, it's a human understanding. And here are some quotes which are in the book. The first by Dostoevsky. I can see the sun, but even if I cannot see the sun, I know that it exists. And to know that the sun is there, that is living. So this is a kind of the idea that even if it's raining and cloudy, we do know the sun is there and always shining. And the sun is the metaphor for the self, or the Atman, or the Purusha in yoga. Then there is one from the Sufi tradition. Yet since the earliest time that man has sought to comb the locks of speech, his goodly bride, not one like Hafiz from the face of thought has torn the veil of ignorance aside. So the veil of ignorance in yoga is called Avidya, non-vedere avidya. And according to yoga, all our sufferings come from a non-seeing of something. So this is that veil of ignorance that Hafiz is talking about. And the third one is T.S. Eliot. At the still point of the turning world, neither flesh nor fleshless, neither from nor towards, at the still point, there the dance is. But neither arrest nor movement, and do not call it fixity. Where past and future are gathered, neither movement from nor towards, neither ascent nor decline, except for the still point. There will be no dance, and there is only the dance. That's from the Four Quartets. So this is the idea that there is a let's say a hidden reference point for everything we do and know, and that is what gives life to life. And this is the purpose of yoga, is to make this clear, and that is actually who we are, rather than what might be called the dance, which is our thoughts, feelings, experiences, and everything we know. So, let's go back. Yoga, Oh yeah. No, so here we have Happy Bear, Bearasana, and he or she, the bear, is looking happy, and we'd all like to be with that kind of feeling inside. Now, that's a posture that the bear is taking, but what interests me is that it's sitting on a hard rock, And if you look at that rock, it's actually probably, to me, it looks like a cement, It's a concrete, artificial rock. So my guess is probably that bear is in a zoo. In other words, it's not free, it's in a cage. It is probably not happy, but it looks happy to us, So the idea is, how can you be in any condition with that inner contentment? And that is the promise of yoga. And not as a sort of forced thing, but a simple realization of who we are. To go back to that, we'd come to stepping backwards to life as change. This is a 12th century scroll from China, where the basic flux of life, day and night, good times, bad times, birth, death, windy days, sunny days, is encapsulated, in what in China they call the Tao, the way. Another painting, and shows what was missing in the last scroll, was our view of ourselves as being in that flux. That we navigating the world in order to avoid the pitfalls or the hard lands. So we need to be careful. The idea of us being in a very small piece in a very large universe that is basically, if not hostile, is indifferent to our existence, and therefore we have to do what we can to maintain or ensure our survival, our happiness. And this leads to these images that pop up every now and again on Facebook and things of the galaxy, and you are there. No, the complete insignificance of the human being. No, nobody says, well, where was this picture taken from? No, actually, which is what it's all about, really. So and then I thought, well, this leads to this forlorn view of the Earth from Mars, and this kind of great loneliness that we might feel if we take on board that view of the universe as not having meaning, and of ourselves as just being a part of it, that somehow we are conscious and that's it, that's us there. So according to yoga, everything you think or experience is made up of these three entities, three states: tamas, rajas, and sattva. Tamas is darkness, stillness, heaviness, solidity, quietness. Rajas is energy, activity, movement, fire. And sattva is understanding and clarity. And as you see, they form a kind of vortex. They sort of spiral around each other, and everything, including our thoughts, is also made of those. Thoughts have more sattva and rajas and not much tamas, no? Whereas your car has quite a bit of tamas, no? It's a solid object. So this was the phenomenological view of the world that the yogis discovered, and it's really amazing that they put in clarity and understanding in the world as it exists. Yoga, the practice of yoga, the idea of yoga is to increase clarity and understanding so that we see where we are going. I come from Yorkshire, and at one point, back in the 80s, I was picked up from York train station, and I don't know if anybody's been there, and we had to drive across the Yorkshire moors in our car, and this was back in the 80s, and the car probably had its origin somewhere in the early 60s, no? So it wasn't one of those cars that alert you to whatever's going wrong. And we were driving into the moors, and it started getting very foggy outside and dark, and that's not a place where you want to get lost. And we had to go slower and slower and more anxious about getting home, because this fog increased until eventually we couldn't see anything. And then somebody had the idea to wipe the windscreen. So there was no fog, it was all condensation, no? Because there was no windscreen heater, so the cold outside created condensation on the inside. So and yoga basically does that. It removes this illusion, that you don't know who you are or what you're doing. It's a cleaning of our perceptive apparatus. And what it reveals is there is change, as we've just seen, Prakriti, and there is that which perceives change. And this is a fundamental discovery, which they call Purusha. So in everything you know, everything you talk about, there is the knower. It's not there because it is that which knows. You can imagine taking pictures of everything in the world. The one thing you will never take a picture of is the camera, right? That's how it works, no? You could photograph everything. You could put different lenses and go subatomic and put another lens, go telescopic, and the universe. And then you produce a whole book of everything in the world, the whole universe, missing one thing. And that is the most important thing, because the nature of the camera that you use is what constructs your view of the universe. So, and there's no way you can photograph the camera, just there's no way any of us can see our own eyes. No, you can't see the eye. This is a play of words there. So, and that leads to a view of a reality being somehow out there and being limited. So the question is, who am I? And this is as described by yoga, and all of this is verifiable, through correct practice. Prakriti, as you remember, is nature, mind, body, universe, change, content of consciousness, the known, the seen, the show. Purusha is the self, the soul, the essence, spirit, that which doesn't change. Consciousness, the knower, the seer, the spectator. And these two are together. And what is important is that the knower is completely independent of the known. So no matter what happens to you, a part of you is always independent of it. So I'll read a little excerpt from the book. It is in the nature of each and every human being that we live and experience life as a drama set within time and space. We are born, we live, and we die. We assume that we are somehow beings at the mercy of destiny, our work or activity, and the circumstances of our birth. As we grow, we build a mental image of ourselves in the world, and we identify with what that image shows us. We believe that what we see, that mental image or experience, is the truth about ourselves and the world out there. Yet there is one overriding fact that remains overlooked, hidden in plain sight. This is consciousness, the condition which makes any knowledge possible in the first place. So this is yoga. What do I want? Most of us will probably agree. I don't think anybody here not looking for happiness. Not looking for happiness. Okay? Why are we looking for happiness? Why is it attractive? Do we get there? Okay? I would say one of the conditions is that we're looking for safety. No, if you think about that boat, and freedom. Freedom from anybody telling you what to do, having to do anything, and safety from being, from the change of the world. You want to enjoy it, but to be free from it, and to feel completely safe. And so you have no worries. And I would say that happiness is when you have no worries. In other words, worries block happiness. Happiness comes out of us when we have no worries. It is our understanding of who we are. Then the self is always totally safe and totally free. And the consequence, happiness. And this is where the joy comes from the discovery of the self. The basic text of the psychology of yoga, or it's sometimes called Raja Yoga, or Kriya Yoga by Patanjali, is the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And here, right at the beginning, it's a few aphorisms, very concise, very clear. It says that yoga is the stilling of the mind fluctuations. And here I would like to say to anybody who is a yogi, practicing yoga people, that I'm not an academic of yoga. I am neither an expert of asana, of postures. I am a teacher with Heart of Yoga, with Mark Whitwell. So I'm not going to get involved in the details of the yoga. This is based on experience of what yoga can bring to you, or what it has brought to me, and what I hope it can bring to everybody. So yoga is the stilling of mind fluctuations. And I would say that yoga, underneath, is recognizing that space between your thoughts, emotions, and experience. So in other words, the background. And here you can see, if you think yoga is to understand that there's a white page underneath, or supporting, or creating the possibility of letters that you're reading. No? So don't just pay attention to the black symbols, but pay attention to the white space that makes it all possible. And when the mind is stilled, the seer abides in its own nature. This is this idea of a seer within us, an entity which recognizes itself and just is, no matter what is going on. And I would say, then you understand who you are. And then the fourth aphorism, otherwise the seer is absorbed in the changing states of mind. And otherwise you are mistaken and confused. So this is, in the first four aphorisms of yoga, is the whole opus, the whole thing. Everything else is basically to explain why this is so. Right, I'm going to... Unfortunately, this book contains poetry. So, please bear with me. Poetry was part of the stuff that came out at the time. Forgive, I'm not a writer either. So, but there's an image here which I'm trying and convey as a kind of truth. Falling asleep on the shores of paradise, I dreamed the dream of life and existence. My sufferings and my joys, my fears and regrets, life and death. Then I awoke and saw that it was all just the whispering of the wind and caresses of the waves against my body, lying on the sand under the sun. So this is a view of life, poetic view of life, but also an experienced view of life. That life is somehow where a part of us is dreaming it, or just like in a dream, whilst we're dreaming, everything seems real. All had dreams that seem so real. And you only realize it's a dream when you wake up. Until you wake up, it's real. And it's as real as this experience now. So if the mind can create these worlds in our dream, and the dream may last in dream time hours, weeks, but in what we call real time, just a few minutes, like, it's only 11:15. Then maybe it can do it anyway, here and now. And yoga, the experience of yoga is about waking up in the dream. In other words, you're still dancing. There is only the dance, there is only this dream, but you understand how it's all somehow happening, how it's all working. Traditionally, the visual metaphor now is of the moon and the reflections of the moon. So I would like you to just imagine that you are the moon here, and the waves are your experiences, your thoughts, your emotions. So whilst there is mental activity, that light of the moon is fragmented. We get to that picture of life as change. It's a constant flux. As with the practice of yoga, which is a daily practice, slowly the mind calms down, or during the practice it calms down. And we start to see that there's like a coalescing, some sort of form seems to appear, some sort of identity seems to happen. And in any way, life is nicer, smoother, easier, because our mind waves are calming down. Everything else is still the same, but internally, we are getting better and happier. Until eventually, it's completely flat. And there suddenly the moon, as it were, sees itself as these two things. You are the moon, so you can't see yourself in that way. You see yourself reflected, finally, in your mind, in a sense. It occurs like that. It's a kind of, aha, okay, I got it. And then it doesn't matter what happens, you know who you are, no matter what happens. So the practice of yoga, according to Patanjali, and what my process that led to the book is I basically took Patanjali's Yoga Sutras and analyzed it and tried to see if they were true. It was a simple process of thinking and trying to find out who I was. Right? So it's not... And this is what happened. I'm not sort of repeating verbatim what has been learnt from another source. Okay, yoga consists of discipline, practice, study and devotion to the divine, And as I put it here, yoga is daily practice, clear thinking and inquiry and acceptance of what is. So fundamental is the daily practice. That can last 5 to 10 minutes. In fact, we're going to do something now here. If you do, the whole practice that I used was maximum 15 minutes a day, maximum, but every day. This is because the mind is reborn every morning. So we have to insert our yoga into that rhythm of being reborn, and so change our habits. So these create moments of stillness is the whole point of the practice, whether it's posture, movement, breathing, concentration, meditation, or devotion. 7-minute yoga. That's all. A breath-centered, dynamic meditation. So we can try that now, as I'm sure you'd like to stop listening to me for a minute. Now, what I'm about to explain here is for me essential for me. Now, in my experience, there are many types of yoga. Yoga is, let's say, an understanding. The ways to come to that understanding are many. There is the yoga of devotion, the yoga of doing good works, the yoga of thinking, the yoga of bodily postures, the yoga. There are many. And people do yoga for many reasons. Some just for physical, some for spiritual, some for health reasons. Now, this is my experience. So the breath is key, and if we just now like to start breathing long and slow, in 4 parts. 4 parts means breathe in, pause, breathe out, pause. No, the pause is fundamental. Right? So, if you just like to close your eyes and start to breathe in for a count of 3, pause, breathe out for a count of 3, pause, breathe in, concentrate on your breath, pause. Okay? Now right there, if you're concentrating all your mind on your breath, and then the breath by its very nature stops, then you're concentrating all your mind on nothing. In other words, it's just mind. Right there in that little pause is the space between your thoughts. And that's it. Understanding that is what yoga is about. If we have energy in our body, which we can use now to let the breath move the body, so just as if the breath opens the chest, when you breathe in, allow the breath to open your fingers, for example. So breathing in, the arm opens, or the hand turns up. Breathing out, it turns down and closes. This integrates the body, and you can obviously expand that to be any kind of motion into the breath and the mind, which is a personal integration, a kind of harmonizing of who we are with it, like a conductor. So that in essence is a spiritual practice right there. And it's important to take on board that spiritual practice, or this practice is only about revealing what is already there, what is already the case. There is no change. It's about seeing who we are, all of us. It's about understanding what a human being is. There's no difference between any of us. All experience is caused by the impact of that which is experienced on that which experiences. Knowledge is only possible due to the superimposition of an object, be it physical or mental, on a subject, a figure upon a ground. The very act of knowing is the creation of the finite out of the infinite, the particular out of the universal. Everything that can be known is born out of this duality. This is very important because it implies that our knowledge of ourselves can exist only because there is another unknown part of us which supports it. There can be no writing without paper. It is that background to reality which represents the transcendent consciousness which is recognized in self-realization. The second part of yoga, which I think was very important, was self-study, self-inquiry. Again, there are different interpretations of what this traditionally is. It's reading the ancient texts. But that was in another culture a long time ago. And again, I didn't have access to those texts, so I just started saying self-study. Who am I? What am I? If there is a part of me which is beyond everything that I know, then I should be able to find it. And that is an exercise which is in the book where anybody can go through. It's a matter of eliminating what you are not in order to find what you are. In other words, what you cannot imagine not existing. And you're that. No? A little experiment. What about the world out there? Never mind who I am. So this is another experiment anybody can do that is in the book. Imagine you're looking at a yellow flower, and if we want to turn to physics, and the material explanation, which kind of, if you think back of that universe, without empathy, without compassion, then we're looking at a flower, and as it were, the light rays are electromagnetic radiations going into our eyes, and there it goes into a optic nerve, where apparently at that point it actually goes down into the thalamus, but then it comes back up into the visual center, and we see the flower in our mind. Here, at this point here, the nerves, the electromagnetic radiation becomes electrochemical radiation. In other words, the yellow light, whatever it was, doesn't go past our eyeball. What goes along here is a kind of code. And when that code reaches a receiving area, yellow flower appears in our mind. So if the yellow light doesn't go into your head, where does the yellow light come from in your mind? You imagine it, right? And the present view of science would say that, well, you imagine yellow, you've no idea actually what this is here. No? All you've got is your experience of the world out there. And we'll have a look at why that is not, to me at least, a correct view. So going back to the flower, just to make the point hit home a little bit, let's think it's not just a yellow flower, but it is another yellow, bright object. Any guesses? You're looking at the sun, and your mind is full of sunlight. But if you sort of drill a hole into your head, there's no light. Pitch black. So what's going on? Where is that light coming from? It doesn't go beyond your eyeballs. It doesn't go into your head, but it's full, it's there. So again, in this understanding, you have to put on hold the idea that you live in this world as you think you do. No, the sun is actually black. It's just electromagnetic radiation, like a hot plate. No, it's giving off electromagnetic radiation. We are made in such a way that we don't see infrared light. It's just like red light, but we don't see it. We feel it as heat. So it is our senses which create the world. Now, I mentioned senses for a particular reason. It's very important. This is the crux of what the book goes on to, beyond classical yoga, to what is called Advaita, or non-duality in Indian metaphysics. This is botany, so the arrival of botany. If you imagine we're cutting up flowers, we're looking at botany. And at the same time, anatomy is growing. And we are cutting up bodies and seeing that there are muscles and things, and we are seeing that there are nerves. And the nerves all lead up to a brain, which is like a huge, complicated flower. There it is, you know. It looks like a cabbage. Right? And what is important to understand is that this is always somebody looking at something and an image appearing in their mind. Okay, it's not he, it was probably he, the anatomist, but even if it was a she. They're not looking at their brain. They're looking at somebody else's brain, and probably a dead brain. Just like we looked at the flower. So how more real is this than that flower is? It's the same principle which applies. So if our brain is like that, then also our body is like that. You know, this idea that there's an inside and an outside, that I begin and end in my body, is hard to continue with. It's all happening inside this imagination world here, including your head. So it's not like your brain is in your mind. It's not your mind is in your brain. Now, I ask anybody to explain life differently, because I can't, and that's why I'm convinced it's true. You just have to think things through a little bit. You know, the reason I have a fingernail and a finger is the same as this. I have this plastic. You know, it's wired up slightly differently. It's wired up to my will. But even this, in a certain way, I can move it. I just have to connect. So our body is also in our mind. So where's the inside and the outside? So here we are. The I, the knower, Purusha, sees mind, brain, birth, death, body, nature, time, space, universe. All inside of itself. It is all it. So going back to this 9 scrolls, the second time I looked at it, I saw this little guy here. So I highlighted him. Who is he looking at? Where is the point in which his attention is gathered? No, it looks like he's looking at you, but where is the you really? Where it actually stops? Where is the white screen that his view hits that you can recognize him? Try and find it. Is that not you? So he's there saying, yes, everything's changed, but hello, I can see you. There's also you. Moving on quickly, is the third point is to relax. Yoga is very important. Yoga is not conquering a mountain. You already are free and safe, you just don't see it. It's getting rid of things, it's getting lighter, being less, not being more. It's not believing, it's not thinking, it's getting to understand what you are when you are not doing those things. Quickly, another little view. This is most of us, or at least I was like this. In fact, I wasn't raising my hands doing yoga at the time. No, help! No, in this big mess. Then yoga shows, oh, there's actually a separation. Ooh, I'm safe. And then you go further. This is traditional yoga, Purusha, Prakriti. It sort of rips it out, these two things together. But then non-duality, which is in the book, oneness, you are that. It's all you. It's all that what you consider yourself to be. Another view is that here is an agitated drink. No, we're not quite sure what it is. Anybody know what it is? No. Can you see through it? No. What is it? Bull? With yoga, the stilling of that drink, aha. Now we all know what it is, right? Oil and water. Now the oil represents the knowing part, the water is everything else. Okay, so that happens in an instant, or gradually you get to understand it. And then you go back to living your life. But you know that in here, the little bits of oil which are you are never at risk, which is the joy. So practice, inquiry, acceptance. Let's see if I'm going to give you anything from the book. Yoga is holistic because it treats the person at home, at work, at play, and at work. This is Zensium, which is a company which we are dedicated to, bringing this understanding, this clarity to people in their work, and we've identified the core attributes: confidence, objectivity, resilience, and efficacy. Leadership, buzzword, no? Qualities are already present in all of us. Yoga removes ignorance, which is fear, and so reveals perfection. So if you consider you knew that you were perfect, you have no need of anything. If you have no need of anything, then you don't be offended by anything. So the end point is you work in a sort of impersonal way just to do what needs to be done, and much better because you're not wasting energy. There was a study by Harvard Business Review where they identified the greatest waste of resources in any company today is interpersonal, intrapersonal conflict. I'm not good enough, oh, that's for me, that's for me, she said that, he said this. Sucking energy out of any company. A perfect life is already in you as you. Just needs uncovering. So yoga goes from confusion, which is called Avidya, or non-seeing, to aloneness, where that says that separation, which is called Kaivalya, to all oneness. No? And this L here would be love, which is the experience of unity, where everything is one. Just as there is an intelligence that operates in your body, there is an intelligence that operates in the universe. When we rid ourselves of the illusion of separation, we aren't separate, then we open our minds to this universal intelligence. 7 minutes a day, I guarantee 10% increase in happiness and productivity with no increase in effort or energy. It's almost mathematical. If you harmonize breath, body, mind, then you release energy. The expenditure, as you've seen, is only something like that. It's nothing, it's breathing. You're doing it all the time. So it says, know yourself, know what life is, enjoy. For more information, this is the website for the, let's say, the corporate or work-based application. My blog, where I write about all these things, and other things like events, retreats, videos on social media, if you look me up on YouTube, Facebook, and such things. Thank you very much.
So thanks a lot, Namir, for sharing these brilliant thoughts. So maybe we have time for a couple of questions. So if you have got any question, please use the microphone. I just come down. Any questions? Any clarification?
Yeah, thanks very much, Namir. We also hear a lot about mindfulness, and it seems that quite a lot of what you're talking about relates to this concept of mindfulness, but mindfulness is a bit fuzzy in my mind as to exactly what it is. Do you have any thoughts on your program and mindfulness and yoga and mindfulness?
Yeah, mindfulness is very popular right now as a means of clarifying the mind. It's a Buddhist meditation which leads to the ability to focus or to observe everything without getting lost in the storm. The big difference between Buddhism and yoga is that Buddhism does not believe in the self. For Buddhism there's just nothing. It's just thoughts one after the other. Yoga says, well, how can we remember, thoughts if there's no continuousness? So they are very, very different. But in practices, and Buddha had 2 yoga teachers before he went into and became Buddha. He was practicing yoga, or he had yoga teachers. And meditation is one of the biggest parts of yoga, and concentration. So mindfulness is a practice where you just observe everything without getting involved in it. And even observe yourself observing yourself, and so on. What is interesting is that it's been taken a lot by corporations. Google has a big program of mindfulness, and they link it together with neuroscience and emotional intelligence. So that's where we are at the moment with these things. Not sure if I answered your question.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm probably not mature at all in the yoga sense, because for me the most difficult is what you give as a advice here: accept everything. And this everything for me is not a problem, but something that is difficult to accept. Any advice how to somehow approach this?
Yes, I would say practice, just try. No, the more they accept everything is in the context of the yoga endeavor. It is important to achieve this freedom if you just accept everything, you surrender. That's the third part of yoga. Because if we or everything that we try and resist is in our mind, is in our thoughts, our perceptions. If we think it's real, then we get stuck in it, in a certain sense, in that turning. If you just accept it and okay, be open to perhaps everything is for the good, maybe, then we are able to, in a sense, just be open to a kind of flowering, because this yoga thing sort of happens to us. We can't make it happen. And we never know exactly what the end result of anything that is happening at any time. Just like 20 years ago, I had a very awkward, psychotic, and I thought myself as a kind of a complete mess. Now, 20 years further down, I think it was actually a very beneficial thing. And I'm glad I had it, because it pushed me into trying to find out why. So in yoga, everything that happens to you is trying to liberate you, everything. And this is the third point. In the universe has this intelligence. It's just like if there's a way out and you keep running into walls, eventually you'll find a way out. But each time you hit a wall, it's painful. Failure is the way to success. There's no other way of getting there.
Maybe.
Yes. Thank you, Namir. It was very interesting. You said that you would like to take yoga more to the workplace. Can you elaborate on this? Because, of course, Google and other these progressive companies, I'm sure they're more favorable to this. But how do you see this in the more traditional working places?
Well, the fact that Google, Apple, and these companies are involved in these is helpful, because it creates a kind of consensus that the best performing companies are taking on these practices. I work at a company that has grown 500 or 600% in the last 5 or 6 years. The chief of that company has been meditating for many years, and he employs my services we do corporate meditation, and it's part of one of the most attractive things. As they grow, they have to hire people, and when they discover that I do my services there, then they're much keener to get the job, because there is an office where you become healthier and better every week that you go there. In fact, it's full up. So it's a change of mindset from the idea that work is a kind of sacrifice and then you have to try and recover at the weekend or Friday night. It's a change of mindset that the internal life, the personal life of the human being, of the worker, is not important for the bottom line of the company. And Google are showing that, and Apple are showing it is completely important, because it's people that work, and people are complex and they have a lot of things, and how they view themselves is the most important thing in how they're going to approach their work. So it's a case of convincing people that there is, in a sense, profit to be made. There's more money. There's more productivity, Hey, at the same time there's more happiness. They are not antithetical. There's no problem with being rich and happy, and why we can't all be rich and happy. No, all of us.
Okay, so I don't see any other hands, so maybe let's all thank again. Oh, maybe the last one.
How would you choose yoga? Because there are so many types. How would I know which one I would enjoy more or benefit from more?
Well, I would say, first of all, why do I want to do yoga? What is it that attracts you to yoga? No? And choose the one that most suits that. If you Google types of yoga, you'll get about 15 or 20 different types of hatha yoga, physical yoga. Whereas traditionally in India, that was only one of the 6 different types, or more or less, yoga. Mind yoga, yoga of service, yoga of devotion, yoga of tantra, and all these things. So it depends what you're looking for. In my case, I was looking for resolution of my psycho-emotional problems. Well, in fact, that's why I initially got into it. It didn't help that much. But then later, I somehow stumbled across this yoga. You be clear what you're looking for, and then see if you feel good with the teacher. If the teacher seems to be authentic, if they seem to have, what it is you're looking for. It's all good.
Okay, so let's thank Namir again with a round of applause, and it was really good.
So, thank you very much, Elias. Just about the happiness passport, This is how you get into happiness. Your name, you can put me, Your number, 1, okay? Issued by me, The date, whenever, valid forever. And on the inside, say, I am life. Right? You can meditate on that. And the practice, as we've seen, breathe slowly in 4 parts. Allow the breath to move the body naturally. And do that between 5 or 15 minutes a day. You can even start with 5 breaths. Like 1 minute. But just do it every day. Inquiry. Study the Yoga Sutras. Find out a little bit about exactly how the most amazing thing that can happen to you is yoga. Really. It really is. And yoga is something you become, not something you do. And the attitude, as I said, is try to accept everything. Because if we don't accept, we're in conflict. And from conflict, you'll only get more conflict. All our problems are the inability to accept things as they are. Right?
Okay, so thank you, and thanks for coming, and have a nice afternoon. Yes. Thank you.
Well, one more thing, if anybody wants to see me, I work around the corner doing healing, so leave some cards here.